My American Studies 140 students, this is Professor Donald Earl Collins. This is literally my fifth take of this today. Today is Monday, December the 13th, 2021. For all intents and purposes, the course is over today. Course finished at 11:59 p.m. last night, December the 12th. If you have not turned in your reflection number 3 assignment, I would say you can't turn it in now. It's too late. Course is over. All I'm supposed to be doing now, from now until grades are due, and grades are due within 72 hours of the final assignment for any course, which is this Wednesday, December the 15th, is grading your projects, grading your last set of discussions, grading your reflections, the overall grade for the course. So there's that. As of right now, I have submitted already within the last hour or so your grades for your final projects. I've submitted your grades for weeks 13, 14, and 15 for this course in terms of discussion and participation, which actually is a little bit easier for you guys because A, Thanksgiving week is a week off, so it doesn't even count, and B, part of your discussion grade are your reviews of your peers' projects, papers, executive summaries, video discussions, etc., etc. So, and I did use those as a guide to help determine your grades for your projects as well. So the two sort of went together, hand in hand with each other. So that was good. That worked out. The truth is, most of you did really, really well, right? It's just that the ones of you who didn't do well, it's really going to impact your grade. So it's just, someone who hasn't gotten a lot of sleep the last, couple of years, it's been sort of a tale of two sets of projects. There's a set of projects that range from an 89 all the way up to a 98 and a half. Some of you just knocked it out the park. Because I think it's partly because I allowed you to be more creative, which allowed some of you to try harder to put more stuff in. Some of you took your creativity to the point where you didn't really think about content as much as you should have, and that's reflected in your grade. But for others of you, it really made a difference in the quality of your work, and the quality of the presentation of your work, and the quality of your thought and analysis around the work as well. Because by being able to do these things, it gave you a different perspective, and that was reflected in these projects. These are some of the finest projects I've had in the 3 years I've been teaching this course, and there are at least 3, probably 4, where I would probably pull bits and pieces from and say, this is a good sample. There's a good sample proposal. This is a good sample first draft of an executive summary. This is a good sample first draft of video presentation or a script. This is a great second or final draft for a presentation. This is a great podcast. This is a great collage, etc., etc., etc. You guys, most of you did really wonderful work in terms of the presentation aspects of your thing, of your projects. Some of you did above and beyond. Some of you were so thorough in terms of the content and context and providing context. And I really appreciated that, and I hope my comments reflect that on your individual and group projects as well. But for some of you, probably about a third of the class, right? You did either not as well as I expected you to do, or you didn't do as well as I and you probably expected you to do, meaning that some of you didn't do that particularly well at all. And trust me on this, it wouldn't have, for some of you, it would not have made a difference if you had presented this work. It might have actually made your grade worse to have a presentation to go with it, seeing that if you had done it in person or by video, people have had questions. Why didn't you cover this? What happened? What's this glaring omission here? Why don't you have a bibliography? Things of that nature, right? Some of you were extremely nice, probably too nice in your commentary. I'm not saying be mean. I'm saying that, if you're looking at content, if you're looking at for analysis, if you're looking to see if people answered key questions, they're part of the themes of this course of understanding community, understanding culture, understanding how different processes and systems interact in ways that disadvantage people. and the cultures that they possess, because they're part of these cultures, right? And if all you're saying is, well, you could have used a few more pictures. I thought your presentation was, was cool, and you did a few good things, and then boom, you're done. That's not the point of peer review. It's to do a review, just like I do a review of your stuff. You should be able to do that as well, right? You do this review where you're being critical, constructively critical. Maybe you could have done this, maybe you should have done that, but you still should be a part of this that is yours a critique. You're not personally criticizing these people. You don't know most of the students in this course well enough to give a personal criticism, but it's a critique. You're saying, oh, maybe this isn't as good as you think it is because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. That's all. No big deal there. If people are offended by that, well, we spend a good portion of our lives being critiqued by other people at work, in academia and family, et cetera, et cetera. If you've never experienced constructive critique, then, someone's lying to you. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. And that's sort of what these, peer reviews reflect, some of them, sort of people sort of glossing over stuff, obfuscating because they don't want to offend. Well, but that's part of that was part of your grade, and so your grade, it's reflected in your discussion grade, as a matter of fact. So some of you have lower scores because, quite frankly, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to provide critique, not just praise, right? No one's project's perfect, and the critique you provided at best might have been superficial. So, just word to the wise, when you do peer review, do a good peer review, right? Some of you did excellent peer reviews. You were able to see what was good in people's projects while simultaneously also telling them, well, why don't you do this? I have a question about that I don't think you answered here. You needed to talk more about X. I think your project would have been better if you presented it this way. Those kinds of things, and those grades are reflected in your discussion grades as well. I mean, those types of critiques are reflected in higher discussion grades. So, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let's see what else. There were some glaring omissions in some of the work that you guys did, and thematically those were bad, right? If you don't really get to the issues around, say, intersectionality, right? If you are only describing things in very monolithic sort of ways, this is why I desperately have asked you all semester to stop using terms like the black community, right? Or the queer community, or the low income community. You're glossing over a lot of variation in doing that. And you're glossing over intersections as well. We spend a whole week talking about LGBTQ, LGBTQIA plus cultures, communities, rights, types of issues, protests in DC around discrimination, around lethality, around these issues. We looked at a documentary called Check It, right? And these involve people who were black and queer, right? Black and poor and queer, black and gender fluid and queer. We could go on and on with all different variations, but the most important point is understanding these intersections. That intersections, in terms of how our society looks at intersections, is is considered negative because you're different, right? But in terms of who you are, adds complexity to who you are, and so on and so forth. And so, missions like not talking about the history of the community when the community went through highs and lows, to describe a community as being destroyed, while simultaneously also omitting the fact that that community had shifted from being largely, say, black to being Latinx or being African black in a span of basically 10 or 15 years. That's a major change. That's a major change, and it has implications for why the community might be harder to gentrify or easier to gentrify. It might be less resistance to gentrification. That's important. Those are important things to not miss, right? And while your classmates might have missed it in terms of their critiques and their evaluations of your work, as your professor, I'm not going to miss those things, because if I spend a week on it or 2 weeks on it, I expect you to basically keep that in mind. So it's things like that that ultimately determine your grade on your projects. Ultimately, will reflect in terms of your grades in discussion, in terms of level of critique, and those kinds of things. So, um, but at the same time, let's be real. I mean, 2/3 of you scored between an 89 and a 98 point, and 98 and a half. All right, 2/3 of you, right? That's, maybe a little bit more than 2/3. The class average was almost an 89 and a half, which basically, on my book, is borderline A minus, so B plus A minus grade overall average. So, there's that. Some of you also lost points, quite frankly, because you turned in your final assignment on time. Your final, even with the 36-hour general blanket extension that I gave everyone, some of you were a week late turning in some of your stuff, right? And for those of you who tried in the last week to finally go, I'm going to turn this in now, I'm going to turn that in now, there shouldn't have been no confusion. There was no extension given to anything other than peer reviews. I gave you an extension for peer reviews. I allowed one group to go week 8, which was an optional week for in-person presentations, not for just any old presentation. So that's a complete misread on many of your, on the part, well, I shouldn't say many because there weren't that many. There were 4 people basically who did not understand that, and mind you, I have been saying since the middle of November, since about the second week in November, that as we get closer to the end of the semester, the word no is going to be coming out of my mouth, and I'm going to type that bit more because we're at the end of the semester. So there's that part of it too, right? So I just wanted to make sure that you understand why you have the, but in general terms, why you have the grade that you have, why you have the grades that you have on your final projects, or you have the grade that you have in your final week's worth of discussion. So so there's that. I have basically till the end of the day Wednesday to read your reflections and give you your grades on your reflections. Do not fret if you're borderline between one grade and another, because if you've turned in your reflection, and you've done what you're supposed to do in that reflection, more likely your grade's going to go up. And if you're borderline between A minus and an A, it probably means you get an A. If you're borderline between a B plus and A minus, it probably means you're going to get an A minus, and so on. So don't fret if you've already turned it in. If you haven't turned it in, it's too late to turn it in now. So I'm sorry about that. That's just a reality. So there's that. But in any case, I have to get this done by the end of the day Wednesday because, 72-hour rule. You have until, I believe, Wednesday to do your student evaluations of me in this class. Not, in an ideal world, I would expect, to evaluate me the same way I evaluate you, not as people, right? I'm not sitting here trying to make judgment of you as a person in general, you as people in general. My job is to evaluate what you're doing, right? And quality of what you're doing. And give fair and honest critique. So that's, if you critique me for not projecting enough in class, that's fine. But if you critique me because of the way I pronounce words, that's not a fair critique. In fact, it could be borderline even racist and ageist too, right? So there's that part, right? And trust me, I've seen plenty of those over the years. So please, please, please try to keep this professional, right? Like, you're evaluating me as your professor, not as a person, not as to whether or not you like me or not. I might not like everybody in my class, but I'm trying to be fair to everybody. So the least you can do is give me fair and honest critique that I can use in the future, or not. Ultimately, if you decide that you want to use this as an opportunity to basically blast me as a person, you can blast me. You can, you put me on blast, as they say, and I'm going to be like, okay, fine, that's how you feel, that's how you feel, so be that way, as they say. So there's that. But let me finish up by saying that, it was a pleasure to have most of you in this course. I'm just going to be honest. Most of you. There are some of you who are a pain in the asses most of the semester, if not the whole semester. And then there are some of you who this semester was just tough for a variety of reasons, because this is a bizarre time. This was a bizarre and surreal experience to have in-person classes where we all have to wear masks, or where I have to insist on it, and then we have to be around each other, which sounds great until you realize that people carry diseases, right? And it wasn't like I didn't get sick off of students before the pandemic, so try to throw in COVID on top of that, and you're kind of like, no, I don't want to be around you for more than I have to be. And that's true. That's the side of me that came in the classroom, really the reality that I knew that I would have to be around you, but I didn't want your diseases, right? So there's that. But at the same time, as the semester progressed, it became fairly obvious that that most of you have been following most of the guidelines, most if not all the time, which has been great and made it easier for me to teach as the semester progressed. And I thank you guys for that. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that most of you were patient with me in that regard. So thank you for that. And I just wish you good tidings, good health, rest, Godspeed, as we get through the end of this year and into next year, right? Happy holidays, stay safe and stay sane, and a good beginning to 2022 to all of you. I want to make sure that I say that, because I don't think I said all of that in class last Wednesday. So let me say that now. So thank you all for being part of the course. Thank you all, despite what you might think of me, for getting something out of the course. And I hope to see you all some way, shape, or form on campus in the future. Take care.